So 241. Today we're talking about Mikko Rantanen in Dallas. Now, is this a possibility? It's looking more and more likely. It's not confirmed, but we've seen sources, we've seen contract extension offers, we've seen all of that, and it's looking more and more likely that Mikko Rantanen is going to go to Dallas. Again, no confirmation yet, but I really like this deal for Dallas. I think once it goes down, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a third team involved to retain more salary on him because it's arguable because once Dallas they get Miro Heiskanen and Tyler Seguin back come playoff time, they're not gonna have to worry about money because the cap's gonna go away come playoff time anyway. But if you can get Mikko Rantanen at $2 million for the time being, that's really, really good and something that is really intriguing and certainly could increase his value if you're retaining half on him, and you might be able to get even more assets out of that because you're helping Dallas in their cap situation. Again, with Tyler Seguin out, with Miro Heiskanen out, it's a complicated situation. But Dallas is already good. They're still playing really well lately, so it doesn't necessarily matter as much. And with Dallas, they get a premier scoring winger who brings a nuanced power forward style game, brings an element to their team that is really rare to see. And I don't necessarily think, well, of course there aren't many Mikko Rantanens out in the NHL, and I think every team that would be interested in acquiring him, they're getting something that no other team really has. And Mikko Rantanen's a premier power forward. He brings that style night in, night out. Obviously, with Carolina, the rumblings were that he wasn't going to fully embrace signing an extension there, so it was complicated situationally with how things could go down with that after losing Jake Gensel for nothing last year, and how that could have really hurt them this year, especially losing Martin Necas. They could have kept Martin Necas, and even Colorado could have kept Mikko Rantanen, and none of this would have happened originally. But with how Necas is playing in Colorado and how Rantanen hasn't been playing that well in Carolina, plus given the fact that Rantanen he wasn't necessarily going to sign an extension right away come today. I think this is something that Carolina had to do, regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs, regardless of how far they go in the playoffs. If you lose in the first or second round in the playoffs, it doesn't really matter what Mikko Rantanen can bring to your team because you're going to be out. So with Rantanen in that sense, it makes sense where they have to get some future assets and some roster players at the same time so they can still be competitive and still win a lot of hockey games. It's just more a matter of what are they going to get back in terms of roster players, in terms of potential prospects. I would imagine, again, there's no confirmation whatsoever on any of this. This is just pure speculation from my end. I would think Logan Stankoven would be a part of it. I don't know what else they have to do to make the cap situation work in Dallas because it's more important that Dallas makes this work than Carolina because if there's no extension in place, and I would imagine if there's no retained money, and if Rantanen doesn't get bumped down in terms of cap hit to $2 million, I would imagine this is going to be hard for Dallas to try and do. But they have the room, and it makes sense even now because I remember a few days ago listening to Jim Nill and talk about how he he wasn't going to go after guys like Eric Carlson and Seth Jones, and now we know why. It makes total sense. If there's a guy like Mikko Rantanen on the market, you have to go after him. More than Seth Jones, more than Eric Carlson. Those guys are just two aging defensemen. Mikko Rantanen's a guy who can bring a premier scoring element to your team. So it makes total sense why Dallas would do this, why Dallas would execute on it. And I think this is just a great fit all around for Dallas. It's ironic how Rantanen started off in Colorado, and after all this, he's going to end up back in the West, back in the same conference as Colorado, and he's going to end up with Dallas. I just think that's kind of weird. But and even this too, like I remember there was a situation where Colorado they're offering a pretty similar amount of money to what Dallas is offering on the extension right now. I believe it's 8 years at 12 million per is what I've seen. So Colorado, they could have just kept him and signed him at that, ironically. But with Dallas, they still got a good team. They still have a lot of scoring up front. They still bring a lot of versatility in their scoring group and their depth. And this is a type of player that, again, rare, very rare to find. very rare to see these type of players get traded, and this is going to be his third team in the season, which is really interesting. Who would have thought at the start of the year that Mikko Rantanen would be on three different teams come trade deadline day? I don't think anybody. And I think long term it's going to be a great fit for him in Dallas. It's going to be something where he could be the star of his own team potentially, especially with guys like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. They're aging a little bit. I think Rantanen could really evolve into that cornerstone for the franchise and that player because he doesn't have Nathan McKinnon, and we know that. And it's much different behind Nathan McKinnon because Nathan McKinnon's the top player in the Avalanche. The second best player in the Avalanche at the time, arguably, was Mikko. I would say it's between Kale and Mikko. I would say Kale would be the second best, but Mikko, you could argue second or third, either way, really. And I think on Dallas, you could argue now he's arguably their best player, arguably. I don't say that with full conviction because you have Wyatt Johnston who's producing really well. You have other players inside that lineup who are producing really well. And this is no guarantee that's going to fit right away. We saw what happened when Mikko was traded to Carolina and how it took a little bit longer for him to adapt. I think I don't necessarily know how long it would take for him to adapt with Dallas because they play a similar style system to Carolina, and I just don't know. I think it'll be an interesting situation to see how this whole thing plays out with Mikko in Dallas. I think it's a great move for Dallas because, like I said before, you're getting a retained Mikko Rantanen, and if there's a third party broker involved, you can get Mikko Rantanen at $2 million for the next few months, which is an absolute steal. And you take that and run. And so I'm really excited to see how this whole situation plays out and how Mikko Rantanen fits with the Stars long term as well.